Sheikh, how will the world be before Dajjal arrives as a person?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Before Dajjal arrives in person, our Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, has given us a timeline. The one that with which I am most comfortable is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he was speaking to his companion Muaz ibn Jabal, radhiyallahu anhu, and the hadith is located in the Sunan of Abi Dawood. And he said that at that time when Jerusalem is center stage in the world and Medina is in forlorn desolation, then the next event would be the Great War, the Malhama, and then would come the conquest of Constantinople, and we know why. A Muslim army will conquer Constantinople, we know why. And then after that comes the Khuruj of Dajjal, meaning that Dajjal will now appear in human form.
Sir, there is a difference of opinion regarding Dajjal. Some scholars are of the opinion that the Dajjal will be a system and then a person. What is your opinion? I'd like you to clarify.
Those who wish to follow that opinion that Dajjal is a system are free to go their way and leave me alone. Our Prophet ﷺ, the first thing he said about Dajjal is that he referred to him as Al-Masih Dajjal, implying, and this is elementary, that here is someone who wants to impersonate the Messiah, and that is why he's called Al-Masih Dajjal. The Messiah was a human being, and therefore someone who wants to impersonate the Messiah can't be a mountain, can he? He has to be a human being.
We read in the hadith that the Dajjal will have some sort of a control. So, I ask the same question again. Will he be like a president? Will he be a king, a dictator, a warrior? Will he have some sort of a system before he arrives?
Yes. In order for him to fulfill his mission of impersonating the true Messiah, we must first of all recognize that the Messiah is someone described by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as Al-Hakimul Adil, someone who would rule, not rule downtown Chicago, rule the world, and rule the world with justice. Ruling the world with justice requires power. It requires political power, it requires economic power, it requires military power in order to rule the world. And so someone who wants to impersonate the Messiah must therefore also seek to rule the world. And in order for him to rule the world, he has to come with a political system that will allow him to rule the world. And so he has created the political system today. He has created the United Nations organization, and he has embraced all of us like sheep and cattle and goats and camels who have lost the capacity to think. All of us are in the United Nations, and he has created the International Monetary Fund in order to embrace all of us and entrap us and rule of us, and all of us, like sheep and cattle and goats and camels, have all become members of the International Monetary Fund. This is Dajjal. He has to come with many different systems in order to be able to establish his rule over mankind.
Sir, you've named a few events that will happen before Dajjal arrives as a person. Can you elaborate more? What is Constantinople? What are the other events?
The Great War is the next event, and it is called the Malhama.
Armageddon in the Bible.
And in the Torah and the Gospel, they know of it as Armageddon. But we're not the only ones who are expecting the Great War. Most of mankind now are convinced that there is nuclear war coming. And it is because that nuclear war will be one in which NATO would seek to wage war on Russia and China, because while others have no problem in bending down and kneeling on their knees for everything that comes from Washington and London and the World Health Organization, Russia and China refuse to bend their knees in submission to the West. And because of this, they need to wage war. They need to wage war because their monetary system is now threatened by China and Russia. The monetary system in which the US dollar is the international currency. And so there are lots of people who agree with us that yes, NATO is lusting for war with Russia. And Russia has said, we're ready for you anytime you want to come. We're ready for you. And when Russia took Crimea and we celebrated, we who still have the capacity to think, we celebrated when Russia took Crimea. Russia took control of the Black Sea. And this is in preparation for the Great War, because Russia will survive the Great War and China will survive the Great War. But modern Western civilization will suffer such an enormous defeat. The Quran speaks about that defeat when Allah says in Surah Ar-Rahman, but nobody studies the Quran tomorrow at this time. Pakistanis have more important things to do than to study the Quran. And I'm here in Pakistan as a forlorn Islamic scholar. I'm here to try to teach the Quran as it ought to be taught. Allah says in Surah Ar-Rahman, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان. I'm going to deal with you. He's talking about the Great War. So Russia and China, of course, they will be badly affected by the war, but they will survive. And that prepares the way, because Russia now controls Crimea. That prepares the way for a Muslim army to conquer Constantinople. And when the Muslim army conquers Constantinople, as prophesied by Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, and I don't have time for the sheep and cattle and goats and camels who argue that the conquest of Constantinople by the Ottoman Empire in 1453 fulfilled the prophecy of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Tell these people, go your way and leave me alone. When the conquest of Constantinople takes place after the Great War, the first thing that we would do is to return Hagia Sophia to those to whom it rightfully belongs. And when we return Hagia Sophia to that Orthodox Christian world, then the prophecy in the Quran will be fulfilled, in which Allah has promised, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prophesied, that a Christian people will become closest in love and affection to us Muslims. وَلَتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ النَّصَارَى. Where is Islamic scholarship today? to be able to at least understand the Quran before you explain it in contemporary language. This is what's going to happen. And then when we conquer Constantinople, the Bosphorus will now be free, and the Russian Navy will be able to go to the unmolested into the Mediterranean. And that's bad news for Israel.